In this example, I'm going to show you how to download selected data from Virtual Victoriana. Here we are at the main homepage. I'm clicking Census Records. And as I described earlier, I'm going to be looking for records of servants. So I take a look at the relationship to household, and by using the % signs around the word I'm interested, servant, that's going to act like a wildcard and pick up anything with servant after it, or servant before it, servant in the middle. So these are all of the records where the relationship to household is servant. You'll notice that sometimes the occupation is more specific than that, sometimes not. I click on comma separated value, and this is going to download the file, and I can click to have it open directly into Microsoft Excel. So here's the file. And I have 137 records broken out by particular civil parishes. So this shows us not only which civil parish, but which registration district, and then within that, the enumeration district, and the street address and such. In this example, I'm going to show you how to do a more sophisticated kind of summary, such as counting the number of servants per household in each civil parish. For this example, I've removed all of the other columns of data because they would just get in our way. So the only columns that we have remaining are the civil parish and the street address. I've left the relationship to household as servant here just so that you can see that these are in fact just the servants for each household. The first thing that I'm going to need to do is build a unique list of all of the street addresses. I'm also going to take the civil parish data. So I'm selecting these two columns, and in the data section, and this is again Excel 2010, I'm going to click Advanced Filter. Excel wants to know if the first row is a set of labels, and it is, so I click OK. Now it knows that these are the two lists that I want. I want to copy them to another location. I'm not going to use any criteria, but I am going to select Unique Records Only, and then I click Copy To and pick a new location. Now what I have here is, rather than having a list as long as the whole list, I have a list that consists only of one entry per street address. Now I'm going to use an interesting trick in order to sum up how many servants are at each street address. The way I do it is this. There is a special formula I want to use, and that is the sum product formula. Now the way the sum product formula works is it's going to scan through a whole column, a whole array of data all at once, and look for something that matches something else. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm going to scan this whole column of data and count the number that match this entry here. So in this case, there are 2 servants at 10 Brownland Street. And I'll go ahead and extend that formula for each of the houses in my sample. Now look at this. St. Pancras, 8 Guilford Street, 29 servants. When we see something like this, it's probably worth it to go see if this is the kind of data we're looking for. And when I go back to my original census records, I'm going to see that this is actually a hospital. A foundling hospital is effectively an orphanage. So these 29 servants are actually in an orphanage, not in a regular household. I think I'm not going to count that item. That's an outlier in more ways than one. It is acceptable to remove data that don't fit your hypothesis. In this case, I'm looking for individual houses where Ada Lovelace might have lived. She would not have been living at an orphanage. that doesn't fit the criteria that I'm using. I'm going to go ahead and remove this particular line item. And I can do that by deleting and shifting the cells up. And that won't interfere with my data over here. So now I have established the number of servants per house. And the next thing I want to do is get an average of the number of servants per house per civil parish. But in the meantime, what I want to do is start by getting a total count of the number of servants per civil parish. Now, something that I notice here is that I have two different entries for St. George, Hanover Square, some of which have a period and some of which don't. I want to regularize that. So I'm going to copy the one that has the period and replace the others. So now I have all of them in the same format. Now, the next thing I want to do is get a short list of just the civil parishes. Now, again, I'm going to use the advanced filter method and copy to a new location. Make sure to select the column that I have in mind here. I want unique records only. And I'm going to copy over to this column. So now I have a short list of unique civil parishes. And having edited my St. George, Hanover Square, I've got one of each now. Now I'm going to use this same type of formula again, the sum product formula, only this time I'm going to be doing something slightly different with it. This time I'm going to say, all right, if the item in this column, in this array, is the same as this cell. Okay, so for every case where the civil parish is the civil parish right next to here, multiply that by the number of servants, rather. And as we can see, that sums up very nicely the number of servants that we have present in each of the civil parishes. Next, we want to know how many houses we have in each civil parish. To count the number of houses, we're going to use a variation on the same formula. This time, we're going to look through the civil parish column, here where we have one line per house, and we'll be counting the number of entries that match the civil parish row here. So we only have one house in Shoreditch, and as we copy this down, we see we have 10 houses in St. Marylebone. They are in more than one location. The most housings in Kensington. So servants per house will be equal to this first column divided by second column. And now we have a quantitative value, servants per household, for the sample that we have. And we can do as we did before and say the mean equals average and the standard deviation for a sample and we'd be looking for any civil parish where the number of servants per household was significantly above the mean. And by significantly, I mean at least one standard deviation above the mean. So mean plus standard deviation would be equal to this value plus this value, and mean plus 2 standard deviations would be equal to mean here plus 2 times this value here. So anything above 3.69 servants per household would be well above the mean, significantly above the mean. We do have one civil parish where that's the case. That would be St. Luke. But even anything above 2.91 or above about 3 would be quite good. And there again, we really only got one that comes well past that. St. George Hanover Square is also fairly comfortable. And anything above the mean would be more on the comfortable side than not. After all, these are all houses that have servants in them, so any of them would be pretty good.